Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about a question that was asked of me the other day by an individual who was, uh, you could probably say, more nervous as a person, and they tend to be much more kind of conformist and kind of supportive in terms of disc, and so they're very much more kind of focused on having a process and making sure that people are okay and whatever else. And as a result, he's started trying to get into dating more and things like that because loneliness hits all of us at some point. And he started talking to me, going, conversation topics that he enjoys tend to be the ones that are more meaningful, more substantive, which again, as we've discussed in another video, good for your general happiness. The more meaningful, deep discussions that you have with people, the more connection is made, the more happiness that you achieve, both in terms of people who are extroverted and introverted. It works the same way. Those meaningful discussions, those expansive discussions, make a big impact, and he likes those topics. So he's religion and politics and current affairs and the analysis of games and movies and TV shows and things that he enjoys. All of those kind of things are kind of stuff that stands out in his mind as things that he would talk about with someone on a date. But it's kind of a way that is hit and miss for him. Yeah, it doesn't always kind of get him the results that he would like. It's kind of a set of things that he'll bring up discussions that he thinks will be interesting or pertinent to her interests, and yet then it all falls flat and they go their separate ways at the end of the evening, and that's it. In which case he came to me and I had a chat with him about it, but then I also went, do you know what, I've got my ideas on this from when I was doing much more in the way of dating and dating coaching myself, and I've got a whole load of other bits and pieces around it as well, but I wonder what other information is out there that I can actually use to kind of solidify what I'm thinking and what I had talked to him about, so that also I could bring it to him as well, and then I could bring it to you guys, because that's the whole point of what I do here. And I came across some research from last year, from 2016, by Marissa T. Cohen, who looked into about 400 heterosexual individuals or couples, and as a result kind of surveyed them, went through some follow-up questions and things like that in regards to perceptions of a first date. And what she found was kind of interesting, and it was, for the most part, it's no surprise that, men tend to kind of try and gauge attraction early. They're in a rush to whether, as to whether or not they're gonna get somewhere with this. It's that risk reward thing with a guy. They want to come in, they see that, they throw their net on a thing that they're hunting, and they want to know whether it's caught or not, so that they either need to gather themselves up again and move forward. It's that kind of clarifying the situation to make sure that they can move on to the next one. Whilst women more than men preferred kind of the cues of kind of lively conversation and indications of preference of the dude not necessarily taking charge in terms of like ordering for her or whatever else, but taking charge in regards to going like, we're having fun and I'm going to make sure we're having fun because we're going to talk and we're going to do things and whatever else. But what was also found was that the thing that stood out to this researcher, to Marissa T. Cohen, was that one of the things that stood out most in regards to the whether or not a second date would happen was it was the topics that were picked, that were discussed, that would actually stand out. And this is why I found this quite interesting, because I had my friend come to talk to me about it, and then after a little bit of looking, I found this thing, this piece of research that had been done, and it was really interesting to see that actually, yeah, he's onto something. It's not the It's not the kind of lax attitude towards it. It's not being relaxed. It's not being confident necessarily. That would always, that your perceptions of whether it went well or not. It's not necessarily to do with that as much as it is to do with the topics that are invested in during the whole thing. And it's it was found in her study that men seem to have the perception that if they moved the conversation towards sex, towards the topic of sex, or kind of interactions around it, then they would potentially be better off. While women saw things slightly differently when when the person that they were going on the date with was mentioning more in the way of kind of future plans and stuff like that. Which again isn't all that surprising. Women looking for a provider, a gatherer, someone with direction, someone with a plan, suggesting confidence as well. That being a thing that they're attracted to makes sense. And guys coming in and going, well, actually, if I can move things towards sex and it's still comfortable and it's still fun and they don't recoil from me, then that's a form of acceptance that I can then work with. It's not that big a surprise. But the one thing that came out was that both sexes agreed that one way or the other, the first date is about the woman, is about the female partner in this potential partnership. And again, this isn't anywhere near as surprising as it may sound, because you've got the way that we date at the moment in broad strokes tends to be a case of the guy is expected to come and impress. The guy is expected to come and make himself apparent. And then after that point, it's the stamp of yes or no tends to be far more often found in the hands of the female participant rather than the male. It's very often that you find men chasing after female attention rather than women chasing after male attention. The women get a lot of male attention anyway. They don't need to chase after it in this and prove themselves in the same way that men do the other way around. But when it actually comes to the first conversation, or comes to conversation in the first date rather, having the conversation kind of focus around her is a much more significant thing, because again, people like to be listened to. Yeah, people like to be listened to and talked about, and women tend to talk an awful lot more than men. In which case, when you have the overall kind of chemistry between two people, where the guy is listening and taking on board everything that the woman is saying, actually showing genuine interest, and so on and so forth, the guy doesn't necessarily need to step out of his comfort zone by throwing himself into conversation to the same extent that she is, but at the same time she's able to do what feels natural to her, and that is communicate. And as long as she feels that whilst she's being communicated with or communicating to someone else, that they're actually part of the conversation and not just a bystander, then some bonding occurs. It's like the video that I did on rapport in regards to persuasion. It's that level of understanding that comes from asking questions, paying attention, repeating stuff back. You can use those things that we talked about in that video in regards to this as well, so that that part of the date where these kind of topics and where you're inquiring about her and finding out about what makes her tick and whatever else, it can be a time, especially if you're a dude and your female partner is more nervous around you, then sometimes getting them to open up, sometimes getting them to kind of make themselves the focal point in the conversation so that they will talk about themselves, you can learn about them. I mean, let's face it, a guy is more likely to be able to say what he's into, what he's about, all of his particulars, in a rather concise and easy to format way, compared to a a woman who's going to potentially want to dive into those topics and engage in them and bond over them as they're discussed. And this is why, to be fair, this is one of the problems that I have with online dating as well, that leads into these kind of situations, because everyone's profile is the same. Everyone loves long walks on the beach, everyone likes music, everyone likes occasionally going to the gym, or at least they're going to say they do so that it looks like they're staying fit. You know, everyone's going to say this and that and the other, and it all becomes this very mediocre soup where everyone is basically saying the same thing because they think it's expected in one way or another. And as a result, you know, a guy probably has much more kind of simple attachments to things just because of the way that men work, compared to women who may very well have arguably a very mundane set of interests, but the way that they interact with those interests and the people that they're involved in it and the other situations that they go through with it are going to have much more in the way of emotional significance and other significances to them. And that's where the guy in this kind of situation needs to start listening and investing in those things with them. Now, we've talked about kind of what the focal point needs to be, but the other kind of flip round is, you know, avoiding the rear view mirror for both people. You know, you need to avoid looking at what's going on in this first situation in regards to some kind of weird context relative to old relationships and old happenstances, you know. And so looking further as said, you know, women responding to men who are kind of stating plans for the future, and men who are looking forward to the future because they're talking about sex. You know, it's those looking forward to the experience that you're having with the person that you're talking to is far more important than trying to tell people about failed relationships or sulking and stewing and talking about how this might be a rebound or not or whatever else. You know, simply put, drop those. Yeah, drop those, because the kind of quantity or quality of those anecdotes or those feelings or whatever else, they're not going to boost your standing or desirability in the other person's eyes. They're going to, you know, suggest a very kind of past focused, kind of fixed mindset, and it's not going to be fun for anyone. It's going to bring you down. It's going to break stuff down over time, and so you're not going to really get anywhere with that as your main kind of set of topics to touch on. Look to the future. One of the things that I would always suggest to people, and have always suggested to people, is everybody has dreams. Everybody has hopes and dreams. They all have things that they would love to do. Start talking about those if on a first date. Don't worry if they become fantastical and ridiculous. You know, that just means that they become fun. Yeah? And so start with those topics and talk about those before you talk about anything like job prospects or anything like that. But then the next thing that's kind of highlighted is, you know, a lot of first dates, especially when it's off something like social media or more specifically dating apps, you know, they can be very much like a job interview where you don't know the other person, you're kind of distant from each other, distracted by the fact that the situation is abnormal and strange. And so as a result, you know, you can have this really negative link or linking between just a stream of questions. Yeah, a stream of boring questions. Don't do that. Yeah? Listen to the topics and ask questions, but make the questions specific about the thing that's just been said. Yeah? Don't go for big, broad questions unless it's right at the very beginning, and then narrow down. Yeah? And like going from, oh, well, tell me about your hopes and dreams, very broad question, to going, okay, if you had one thing that you could do this summer, no money wasn't an object and whatever else, what would it be? Yeah? That allows for a much more focal question, and it allows for a much more focal conversation about what you would hope to do, and if you had money, this is what you could do, and oh, well, you know, is there no hope of you doing that? Oh, well, I work like this. You know, it spans out into much other conversations and allows you to have those other little questions focused around each thing, you know, just as an idea. But you have to have those individual narratives that you can share and you can work with, that then kind of plug together as a kind of more high energy, shared, joking around, asking questions, messing about with the ideas as you're going. And so those questions should maybe be fewer, but they should be more pointed, more specific on the stuff that's actually being said and the stuff that's interesting from what they've said, you know. And then, you know, the final thing is that a lot of these relationships start off on a kind of relationships as a whole really start off on kind of mutual kind of attraction and attention and stuff like that. You know, you're not going to fall in love or even fall into a relationship of any sort if there isn't, you know, even if it's a really casual relationship, you're not going to kind of settle into that if you don't have attention going both ways. And so, yeah, whilst it's said this first date, you know, trends towards being more about the woman than it does about the man, in this particular setting anyway, you know, it can't continue after that. Yeah, there needs to be give and take. So if you've, as a guy, if you've gone along and you've done the thing that's expected of you, where you've paid for the date, where you've allowed for investment in them by listening to them and kind of going through their conversation, enjoying it obviously, and asking those pertinent questions, actually having fun with it instead of just turning it into a job interview, you know, and you know, you're not putting up with the conversation. You should be enjoying it and being a part of it. But obviously, if the focal point is them more so than you, then, you know, that's a more interesting thing to kind of run forward with. But you need to look for whether or not the questions then come back the other way. Yeah, maybe not on the first date, maybe not even on the second date, but between dates, or on the third date or more, or whatever else, you know, those questions should be coming back the other way. Those moments of them paying attention and taking interest in what you're doing and how you're doing it and what your thoughts are, you know, they should be coming back the other way. And if they aren't, then maybe it would be kind of useful to you to have a sit down and actually weigh up whether or not you think this is going somewhere. And if it's been a long time of you guys dating and that still hasn't rolled back round the other way, maybe your dates are infrequent, or maybe communication is sometimes hard because you work at different ends of the day or something like that, you know, there should still be that tick round so that you get the attention, the questions, the whatever else back after the fact as well. After that first date, after that point of contact and that kind of progression. But anyway, guys, let me know your experiences, because, you know, as said, this is one of the things that stands out to me about this platform and about the fact that I can do these videos with you guys. You know, if there's someone out there that's found this useful, then, you know, but you've got a different experience, you've got other questions, then drop them down in the comments and we'll see what we can do. Yeah, we can have a chat between ourselves, and, you know, I can put my bit in, and maybe someone else that isn't me will have more of an idea because they've had a similar experience but they got through it a different way. But anyway, tell me what you guys think about this, guys, because, you know, obviously we're talking a very small study here. We're talking kind of averages and norms and kind of societal expectations, and that isn't always the truth for everybody. It isn't always the truth for everybody, rather. And so as a result, you know, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what your experiences are, and let's have a chat about this, because this is a fun topic. You know, how do you come in and start these things, especially when it's just a sit-down date or a speed dating thing, if they really, you know, if people are still investing in those. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you found this interesting or enjoyable, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.